In NASCAR's 75-year history, there have been many numbers come and go. On any given weekend, you will see 36 to 40 unique numbers on the track, and each of those numbers has a story to tell. Hi, I'm your host Matt, and this is NASCAR Number History presented by Dogleg Media. In this series, we look to tell the stories of each of those numbers, who won with the number first, who found victory lane the most, and every other driver to grab a trophy in the number. We go in numerical order, and today we explore numbers 40 through 44, the start of the Petty era. If you missed numbers 1 through 39, the Number History playlist will be linked below. But with that out of the way, let's dive into some more NASCAR number history. Let's start this one off with number 40. The number 40 has 9 total wins with 4 different drivers. It's competed in 949 races with a 0.9 win percentage. The first to win would be Tommy Thompson in 1951 at Detroit. Thompson, a Louisville, Kentucky native, would run 21 total races in the Cup Series from 1950 to 1959, with his lone Cup Series win coming in the 40 car. Not only would this be the first ever win for the 40 car, it would also be the first ever race it was ran. That's a pretty cool stat to have as a number. The most wins belongs to Sterling Marlin. The Silver Bullet, one of the best paint schemes in NASCAR history in my opinion, would cruise to 4 wins with Sterling Marlin behind the wheel. Marlin would pilot the number 40 for Team Sabco and eventually Chip Ganassi Racing from 1998 to 2005. Marlin is a 10-time Cup Series winner and 2-time Daytona 500 winner, and was named to NASCAR's 75 Greatest Drivers list in 2023. And now let's get to the only other winner before we get to the last to win, Pete Hamilton. Hamilton would find success in the 40, running 15 races for Petty Enterprises in the number in 1970. Hamilton would win 3 times in 1970, including that season's Daytona 500, the biggest win of his career. He would win 4 total times in his Cup Series career, the other win coming in a number that we've already discussed, but I missed him in that video. Who can tell me what number that was? And then we get to the last win, Jamie McMurray. Jamie Mack would win in just his second ever start, filling in for an injured Sterling Marlin in 2002. He would only make 6 starts in 2002 in the number, winning his first race and the number's last. McMurray would make one final start in the 40 for Spire Motorsports 17 years later in 2019 at the Daytona 500. McMurray is a 7-time winner in the Cup Series, and we talked about him in detail in the very first episode of this series. And then we get to the current driver, except there isn't currently a driver of the number 40. As a matter of fact, that Daytona 500 start in 2019 for McMurray was the last time the number was on the track. While this number is certainly nostalgic because of Sterling Marlin's Silver Bullet course car, it definitely hasn't seen very much luck since. The last full-time driver of the number would be Landon Castle in 2015 with Hillman Smith Motorsports. What team or driver would you like to see bring the 40 car back? I wouldn't mind seeing it make a return if it has that Coors Light sponsorship and silver paint scheme. And moving on, we hit the number 41. The 41 has 29 total wins with 6 different drivers. It's competed in 1,275 races and counting, and it has a 2.3 win percentage. The first to win in the 41 would be Hall of Famer Curtis Turner. Turner would get the number's first win in NASCAR's first season, in 1949 at Langhorne. Turner is also currently the winningest driver in the numbers history, with 12 total wins. Turner's last win of his career would come in the number, in 1965 at Rockingham, driving for the famous Wood Brothers Racing. Turner was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2016. And now let's get to some other drivers, starting with Jim Paschal. Paschal would earn 3 wins in the number 41, all driving for Petty Enterprises. He would win the 1964 World 600 in the number as well. And you're going to be hearing a lot of this name in this episode, but Richard Petty, the King, he would win 6 times driving his self-owned number 41 machine at Petty Enterprises. 5 of the 6 wins would come in 1963, with 1 more coming in 1964. We will definitely be talking about Richard Petty a lot more in this one, so let's move on to some other winners in the number 41. Speaking of other winners, there's AJ Foyt. Foyt is another legend we have mentioned in this series already. He is one of a few drivers to win the Indy 500 and the Daytona 500. AJ would collect 1 win in the 41 in 1965 at Daytona, driving for the Wood Brothers. Foyt was named to NASCAR's 50 Greatest Drivers list in 1998. And then there's Kurt Busch. Busch, another legend of our sport, would pilot the Stewart-Haas Racing 41 from 2014 to 2018. He would get the biggest win of his career in the number, winning the 2017 Daytona 500 in Stewart-Haas's first race with manufacturer Ford. Kurt's final win in the number would come in 2018 at the Bristol Night Race. Kurt has won in many different numbers, a few still to be discussed in this series, including one in the very next episode. Kurt was named to NASCAR's 75 Greatest Driver list in 2023, and very easily could be on his way to the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And then we get to the last to win, Cole Custer. The last to win in the 41 would be Cole Custer in his rookie season at Kentucky in 2020. Custer had quite the turbulent Cup Series career, one that may or may not be done. He would drive for Stewart-Haas Racing from 2020 to 2022 in the 41. Custer would win that race in Kentucky, locking himself into the playoffs. He would finish the season 16th, last amongst playoff drivers, and it would be the best points finish by far in his 3-year Cup career. Custer was replaced in the 41 in favor of our current driver after 2 dismal seasons, finishing 26th and 25th in the points. Will Custer get another ride in the Cup Series? Let me know. And then we move to our current driver, Ryan Preece. And Preece has had a turbulent Cup career as well, and would be slated to pilot the 41 in place of a struggling Cole Custer to start the 2023 season. Preece would sign with Stewart-Haas as a development driver of sorts, where he would make select starts in the Craftsman Truck Series and Xfinity Series in 2022. Preece started his career with JTG Doherty, driving the 47 and then eventually the 37 for the team. Preece is yet to score a top 10 this season in the 41. Will he be able to turn it around, or will Tony Stewart and Gene Haas have to reevaluate this ride one more time? And then we move on to the 42, and this is where we really start inching into the Petty era. While Richard would win in the 41 a handful of times, this is where the Petty name really starts to pick up steam and notoriety. Let's take a look at the stats. The 42 has 75 total wins with 8 different drivers. It's competed in 1,701 races and counting and has a 4.4 win percentage. The driver with the first win is also the driver with the most wins, and it's a true pioneer of the sport. It's Lee Petty. Petty would get his first win in the 42 in NASCAR's first season of 1949 at Heidelberg Raceway. Lee is also the winningest driver in the 42 car's history with 53 total wins. He is the father of the king, Richard Petty, and would be one of the original pioneers of our sport. Lee is a 3-time champion in the Cup Series, winning the title in 1954, 1958, and 1959. His success doesn't end there. Petty would win the inaugural Daytona 500 in a photo finish with Johnny Beauchamp in the number. At the time, the unofficial results declared Beauchamp the winner, but Lee would protest the results, and after 3 days, thanks to photographs, it was determined that Petty had in fact won the race. Petty would compete in NASCAR's first ever race, and his storied career landed him in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, being inducted in 2011. Now let's look at some other winners in the number 42, starting off with Jim Paschal. Paschal would win 4 more races for Petty Enterprise, this time in the 42 machine. And here he is again, Richard Petty. Petty would be famously known for the next number in this list, but he would collect wins and other numbers in the Petty stable, with 2 of them coming in his father's number. And then Marvin Panch. Panch would only make 5 starts in the 42, and he would win the 1966 World 600 in the number for Petty Enterprises. And then another Petty would go on to win in the family number, this time being the grandson of pioneer Lee Petty, Kyle. Kyle would win 6 times in the Sabco 42, driving it from 1990 to 1996. He would get the last win of his career in the number in 1995 at Dover. It is really amazing that 3 generations of Petty were able to win in the 42 machine. And I'll make it a point to never forget another Joe Nemechek win after I snubbed him in the 25 video. Front Row Joe would collect the first Cup Series win of his career driving for Sabco in the 42, winning in 1999 at New Hampshire. And then there's Juan Pablo Montoya. Montoya is one of the best drivers in the world and would find success in many different facets of motorsports. He is a 7-time winner in Formula One, winning at Monaco in 2003. He's a 15-time IndyCar winner, including 2 Indy 500 wins, and is also a 2-time winner in the Cup Series, both coming at road courses and in the 42 car. Montoya would drive the Chip Ganassi 42 racing full-time from 2007 to 2013. And then the last driver to win in the 42 would be Kyle Larson. Larson would win 6 times from 2014 to 2020 in his time in the Ganassi 42 car. The last time the 42 would go to victory lane would be in 2019 with his win at Dover. Larson would be let go from Ganassi after saying a racial slur during an iRacing event in the middle of the COVID shutdown. While Larson has fully owned his mistake and has since had a career resurgence after being suspended for the remainder of the 2020 season, it is interesting to wonder what would have happened with Ganassi had he never been suspended. And then we move on to the current driver. And the current driver of the 42 is rookie Noah Gragson. He would come to newly named Legacy Motor Club in 2023 after his stint in the Xfinity Series with Junior Motorsports. Gragson has struggled in his first season, and the turmoil with Legacy Motor Club switching to Toyota definitely isn't helping performance. While I know that Gragson has the talent to take the 42 to victory lane, it may be a while before we see it. and it would be more than likely after the switch to Toyota. And then we move on to the 43. And the 43 is one of the most iconic numbers in NASCAR history, thanks largely in part to one man. It also has the most starts of any number in the Cup Series. We will be sure to highlight his achievements, but first, let's look at the tail of the tape. The 43 has 200 total wins with 7 different drivers. It's competed in 2,221 races and counting, and it has a 0.9 win percentage. And the first to win is not the Petty that you're thinking. It would be Lee Petty. Petty would take the 43 to victory lane first with his win in 1959 at North Wilkesboro. It would be Lee's only win in the 43, but it's still cool that he was the first to get a trophy in the number. And then we move on to the most wins, and it's pretty obvious. It's Richard Petty. Petty being the winningest driver in NASCAR history, he would collect 192 of his 200 career wins in the famous Petty Blue 43 car. Richard is one of those Mount Rushmore drivers, being one of only 3 7-time champions of our sport, and being the winningest driver of all time. This next stat is crazy, but 7 wasn't just the number of championships Petty would win. It would also be the number of Daytona 500s he would win. He would also win the Southern 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 twice in the number. He holds the record for most consecutive wins in the Cup Series as well, winning 10 races in a row in 1967. That same season, he would cement a record that will never be broken, the most wins in a single season, where he would win 27 times. I mean, George H.W. Busch would give this man the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's how good he was. We could talk for hours about the impact Richard Petty has had on our sport, but for time's sake, we will make it as brief as possible. Petty would be inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in its inaugural class of 2010, and he is certainly still making an impact at being an owner today in the sport. Now let's look at some other winners in the number 43, starting off with Jim Paschal. Paschal would get wins in multiple numbers for Petty Enterprises, and he wouldn't leave the 43 out, collecting 2 total wins in the number. And then there's Bobby Hamilton. Hamilton would break a 12-year drought for the number, with his win at Phoenix in 1996. This win would be the first of Hamilton's career. He would win the following season at Rockingham in the 43, the last for him in the number. Here's a really interesting fact that I learned doing this series. Bobby Hamilton would get his start in the Cup Series in a super interesting way. He was asked to qualify the 51 Exxon car, one of the movie cars for the movie Days of Thunder at Phoenix in 1989. He would end up qualifying 5th in this car, which was not supposed to be competitive at all. I thought this was super awesome that he got his first action in a Cup car this way, especially at the track he would eventually get his first win at. And then there's John Andretti. Andretti would get the last win of his Cup Series career in the 43 at Martinsville in 1999. Andretti is the nephew of Mario Andretti, arguably the best driver ever in motorsports. He would collect 1 win in the 43. And then there's Aric Almirola. Almirola would get his first career win in the 43 machine in a rain-shortened race at Daytona in 2014. This win would also break a 15-year drought for the number. And then we get to the current driver of the 43, who just so happens to be the last driver to win in the 43 as well, Erik Jones. Jones would get his second Southern 500 victory in the 43 machine for Petty GMS in 2022. Jones has struggled this season in Legacy Motor Club's first season as an organization, and I know Jones is much better than what his results are showing. He took a fairly uncompetitive Petty GMS car last year and outright won one of the hardest races to win. Jones is a free agent after this season, and if he elects to stay with Legacy Motor Club, the team will need to make a lot of strides with new partner Toyota to get back to competitive form. If they are able to make those strides, look for Jones to find victory lane again. He certainly has the ability. And now let's end this video off with the 44. The 44 has 13 total wins with 6 different drivers. It's competed in 1,014 races and has a 1.2 win percentage. The first to win in the 44 would be someone we have mentioned already in this one. Hall of Famer Curtis Turner would collect 1 win in the 44, being the first for the number in 1954 at Columbia. The most wins, however, would belong to Terry Labonte. Labonte would collect 6 total wins in the 44 machine, driving for Hagan Racing from 1978 to 1986. He would win the 1980 Southern 500 in the number. Terry would win his first championship driving the 44 as well, winning the title in 1984. Labonte would also be the last to win in the 44, with the last win for the number coming in 1986 at Rockingham. Labonte would compete in select starts in a Hendrick Motorsports 44 machine in 2005 and 2006 after retiring from full-time competition. Labonte would be inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2016. Now let's get to some other winners in the 44, starting off with Lloyd Dane.
Dane would get 2 of his 4 Cup Series wins in the 44, winning one in 1957 and the other in 1961. And then there's another Hall of Famer to win in the 44. This time it would be 1960 champion Rex White. White would collect both wins in 1958 driving for Julian Petty. White was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2015. And then there's Bob Wellborn. The convertible 3-time champion discussed in last video would collect one of his 9 career wins in the 44, coming in the same season that Rex White would grab his wins, 1958. And then we've mentioned this guy's name for the last 3 numbers, and he didn't want to be left out on this discussion either. But Jim Paschal, he would get 1 win in the number, driving for Julian Petty, where he would win in 1961 at Nashville. And then we move on to the current driver, and this is the second number in this one not to have a current full-time driver. The last full-time driver would be Brian Scott, driving the 44 for Richard Petty Motorsports in 2016, and he would come super close to winning that season, finishing second at the Fall Talladega race. Greg Biffle would be the last to pilot the 44, making 5 starts in the number in 2022 for NY Racing. Finishing the video off in a number without a current driver is kind of a bummer, and we will be doing it all over again for the next few videos at least. And that'll do it for numbers 40 through 44. This was a history-packed episode. Anytime you dive into what the Petty family has done in NASCAR, it's sure to be a good one. As always, I'm prone to forgetting drivers. Let me know which drivers of any of these numbers I may have missed for this one. If you haven't seen numbers 1 through 39, the number history playlist will be linked below. Be sure to check them out. We will be back next week for 45 through 49, and this one will feature my favorite driver and NASCAR's 3rd and most recent 7-time champion. It sure looks to be a good one. If you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. It helps a ton and I definitely appreciate it. We are extremely close to 1,000 subs, and we are certainly going to party when we hit it. Be sure to check the community tab of the channel as well. We do cool little giveaways like autographed merchandise and diecast, as well as updates and polls for the channel. You definitely don't want to miss it. But that'll do it for us here at Dogleg Media. I'm Matt, your host, and you've been watching NASCAR Number History. I'll see you next time.